Thank you for joining us this morning to discuss the Limited Event Wagering Operator license and kind of the process going forward. Earlier this summer, when we had our last stakeholder meeting on the subject, many of the folks asked for some time after the allocation of the master licenses before we kind of started moving forward on this process. So we're coming up on about 1 month since allocation. So we want to start talking about getting the process moving forward. So that's what we're endeavoring to do here today. So we'll talk a little bit about what's required, what you'll need to do. We'll also sort of preview the applications and sort of solicit feedback on a proposed timeline to take applications and then allocate these licenses. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aiden Fleming, and he'll be walking you through the presentation, and then we'll turn it over to Cliff Holden to preview sort of the applications. So Aiden, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you, Director. Just first and foremost, if you have any questions, go ahead and hit the raise hand function, and we can answer them. And or if you're on the phone, if you could wait to the end of the presentation, then we'll have time for some Q&A. This will be pretty straightforward. We're going to start basically limited event wagering. Oop, let me get the slide right. There we go. The definition of statute for limited event wagering operator, and don't let a government agency try to shorten anything, because we will if we can, so we're calling them LEWOs. It means a racetrack or additional wagering facility, off-track betting or OTB, that holds a permit issued by the Division of Racing to offer wagers on horse racing, and that is licensed under this chapter. Dave, you already have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you guys know we've been trying to get a couple people to call in through the regular phone access, and the PIN number that we were given doesn't seem to allow people to get in. So
Okay.
There might be some people who are trying to get into this call that aren't able to access it right now.
I see. We are recording, so no worries on that. If someone from ADE can take a look at that number and maybe shoot it over to Dave or in the chat for the PIN. So the limited event wagering operator, again, someone who holds a permit and offers wager on horse racing that is licensed under this chapter. That's what the new HB 2772 defined a limited event wagering operator as. What does that really mean? If you go down, this basically creates a prerequisites. These prerequisites are stating that LEWOs are reserved exclusively for the racing industry's 3 racetracks and 49 OTB locations. Those are off-track betting locations. To be a LEWO, the OTB or the racetrack must hold a permit issued by the Division of Racing, approved by the Arizona Racing Commission, and be in good standing. So the prerequisite is that permit. Those off-track betting locations are all approved by the Arizona Racing Commission, and they are all in good standing. So the third piece of a prerequisite is that before the application begins, the event wagering operator licenses that have already gone out. Oh, sorry, I think I have that thing on a timer. Those partners who have one of those would have to partner with an OTB or a racetrack. So those are 3 prerequisites to keep in mind based on that definition. So I'll keep going through this and break it down a little bit more. First off, the link at the bottom that I've put on the department's website, there is a map of all 49 locations and where they're located around the state. So one of the important factors of that is that an applicant racetrack and OTB must be located at least 5 miles from a travel gaming facility, event wagering facility, or another limited event wagering facility. So take a look at those. If you're an OTB, check to make sure that that geographic 5 miles is in place, similar with the racetracks. And you can do that through our website or giving a call. Licensing process is the most basic. The event wagering operator designees may partner with a racetrack or OTB. That partnership has to exist first. There is a requirement to submit documentation to the department when you apply, proving that that partnership exists. The second part of partnership, this is what grants you access to apply for a limited event wagering license for one specific physical location. So there are 10 licenses. They are for 10 specific locations. They are not umbrella licenses. So I want to make sure that's clear that tracks would apply for an OTB license as well as, or sorry, not OTB license, for a LEWO license, and one of the 49 OTBs could also apply given those geographic locations, given those prerequisites that we talked about, and then they would partner for a specific physical retail spot. And then upon submission, we would review the applications and based on criteria found in our rules. So let's go over that real quick. First, the event wagering operator list. Who are the potential partners that an OTB or a racetrack could link up with to get a LEWO license? And there are 18 in the state currently. And just a quick list, for your review. So if you're one of these partners, or if you're an OTB or a racetrack, these are the folks you should be reaching out to establish that prerequisite, that link that allows you to apply for the LEWO license. So again, these had to be established first in order for the LEWO licenses to be issued. So that's why this particular licensing timeline is following the other. So now that we've established this list, that's why we're opening this now. We talked about the criteria that the department will be looking at when the application is submitted. And I've shortened this quite a bit, but in essence, these are the criteria laid out in rule in R194106F. Also, you can find that on our website. But good business ability, experience, good standing, demonstrated vision, commitment to make local investment, culture of player protection, ability to begin operations within 6 months of being issued a license, location that would increase patron base in the state, demonstrated financial stability, regulatory compliance, increased employment, enhancement of labor market in Arizona, preference for locations with a large, unique, and unaddressed market and a unique brand. So the timeline, and this is a question. If you recall, we shot out to everyone several months ago and said, what would a reasonable timeline actually look like to you? We want to solicit that again. We did hear back from a few of you, and when putting this together, we used that feedback. This is a proposed timeline that could exist. One note I would like to make on this is, as the applications open and close, if you go down to ADG allocation determination if needed, what that means is there are only 10 applications available. And as you know, there are 49 OTBs, as we stated, and 3 racetracks. So for 10 physical locations across the state, if, let's say, we received 20 applications and we needed to go into allocation determination, the department would take the allotted time in statute to do that. What that does, the determination would end, the license would be issued, and then 6 months from that issue date is when every site would be required to start. So one thing I would say is that the 16th, if, let's say, the allocation process is not needed, let's say 7 or 8 licenses are given out, then we would begin on for example the 1st of May, whatever that date would be when they were issued. So just depending on if that would be needed.
So Aiden, I'm just going to kind of interrupt here. I similar to what we did with the event wagering operator licenses, because there's a possibility that the department would have to go through that allocation process. We would ask any potential applicants to put forward information that would help answer those questions, or how they fit into the allocation criteria up front. So it's not like we're going to go through and once we find out we've got, let's say, 11 or 12 applicants ask for this information, we would ask for you to submit that up front so that if there is a need to go into allocation process, the department can move right into that.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Ernest, go ahead. I think you're on mute still, sir.
Sorry. With the proposed application timeline that you've got here, is that something that is currently adjustable? I'm only raising the issue because the limited event wagering licensing process is going to be a low priority for the new event wagering partners or co-contractors. And so it may take longer to get that set up realistically. It's not going to be a major source of funds for them, whereas going active on their event wagering rights will be. So I'm a little bit nervous that that closing date is going to leave a number of us out there hanging because we have not been able to get the attention of the event wagering folks to say yay or nay and going forward with us.
And Ernest, this is Ted Vogt.
Yep.
Yes, that's why we wanted to have this conversation, and get some feedback from you. This is a proposed timeline. We kind of want to get a sense from the industry of how long do you think you're going to need to make these partnerships that are required prior to the to applying.
Ted, I know how long it took the much larger event wagering license holders to negotiate their deals with their skins. And I think that needs to be kicked out several weeks realistically so that you have time to get the attention of the folks that have the right to offer the limited event wagering services or the activities in concert with them, and to come up with things that will motivate them to even extend this. Because there's also a potential conflict where if they have a retail location going on under the event wagering side, we need to be able to come up with imaginative ways to incentivize them to allow another retail to open up, where the value to them is more than the competitive downside would be. And that's going to take some time.
Okay, thanks, Ernest. Dave Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. If Turf Paradise submits an application for the track, can we also submit applications for the OTB locations?
So in statute, it says specifically, it gives an or there. So the racetrack may apply or an OTB. So one thing that's very clear is that as part of holding an OTB license, they have to have that signal from you, right? There is that connection and that requirement. So if an OTB applies, they're going to have a good standing, obviously, with the commission to maintain their status as an OTB holder. They're going to obviously have to have that connection with the track, receiving the signal to be an OTB location. And the third piece that has been added by this legislation is that they're going to have that contract with the event wagering operators or designees. So if you're talking about like a blanket, a couple of questions that have come up is, so for example, Dave, you just said, could we apply on behalf of OTB, say like you have 5 locations and you want to apply and you want to say, hey, these guys are in my network. I would like to also apply on their behalf. I don't think that statute is structured it that way. I think that it's been structured in a way that's, like I said, that's an or. So also that doesn't allow for like one umbrella license to be held by the track and issue that to say 5 other locations that it applied for on its behalf. It talks about 10 licenses at 10 specific physical locations, limited by geographic boundary of 5 miles from any other tribal gaming facility, event wagering operation that's out there, that's a physical location already.
So then each location has to put in their own application?
That's the way statute is written, I believe, yes.
Any other questions before we move on?
This is why you need guys like
Hey, Dave, go ahead.
I haven't followed all of the various nomenclature, but you keep saying that the track would need to make a deal with an event wagering operator or designee. Is there a difference between the event wagering operator and the designee that has been explained before? And I apologize if you've already covered that.
Sure, Dave, it's right here. Sorry, Ted, go ahead if you want to answer that one.
No, I sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, so Dave, good question. That's why I put the slide up. If you look, for example, Fort Mojave Indian Tribe up there at the top, number 1, in parentheses, it's Superbook. So they have designated an event wagering operator. That's the designee. So it's the company. So San Carlos has Win. You can go down the list here. So, for example, as the designee in statute, they act on behalf of the tribe or franchise.
Okay, so instead of talking to the Cardinals, hypothetically, we could talk to Bet MGM.
Correct.
And try to. Okay, gotcha.
Correct. And
all right,
Dave,
and then the second. May I ask another question?
Sure.
The second question you had was this radius issue. Did you say that has to be 5 miles from another limited event wagering operator also?
Yep, in that box on the right. So just that's to kind of want to hammer that point home because that's an important one. If you're an applicant, racetrack, or OTB, you have to be located 5 miles from a tribal gaming facility, event wagering facility, or another limited event wagering facility that is in operation. And we'll get to that in the application slide a little bit, Dave. So you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork prior to that application so you don't run into one of these issues.
But if we don't know who is going to be granted one and we happen to apply, or one of the other OTBs applies too close to another OTB, you folks will have to decide perhaps which one is the winner, and then the other one is the loser because it's too close, I guess.
Yeah, again, good question. That's why we created the criteria. So it's not going to be the location if two are competing. These criteria are going to be applied, and that's what the department will be looking at when making its determination. So it won't be done in a vacuum about looking at distance. We're going to have to rely on our rules here.
And the last question, the radius is from a tribal casino, not just from a tribal casino that has sports book. In any tribal casino?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dave Johnson, and then we'll go to Ernest.
Yeah, thank you again. Does Turf Paradise has already submitted an application earlier. Will you guys accept that application, or do we need to resubmit the individual application?
I will get to that in a slide a little bit further down, but it's a good question.
Thank you.
Ernest?
Yeah, I'm just reconfirming on that 5. I was going to ask you the same question Dave did, and you answered that. But is it the boundary of tribal reservation land, or is it the boundary of a brick and mortar location of a tribal casino?
The way it's stated in statute is the gaming facility. So I believe that would be the physical location of the facility itself, not the boundary of the tribal land. But we will double check that. It's a good question.
So if they're offering on the tribal land mobile that's extended off the 4 walls, it would still, just find that out, Aiden. That will be helpful to
Sure.
see what the starting point is for the 5 miles. That'll help a lot.
Sure. Andrew.
Thanks, Aiden. So if an OTB partners with a wagering operator, and when they file the application, it's linked to their current location. Let's say they want to move after they've been approved. Is that permissible as long as it meets the criteria? It's not too close to an existing facility, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a good question, Andrew. I think that if you already have machinations that location will be moving, we would like that information in the application itself. If a location moves after application they've been granted, we would need obviously an update to make sure it complies with the geographic requirements, and they're still they would still be.
And Aiden, I'm just going to kind of interrupt here. I really want people to familiarize themselves with the factors that we put into the rules. We don't want to get into a situation where people are getting these and then moving them because, look, one thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to hit a location that would increase patron base in the state. We're trying to reach maybe large, unique, and unaddressed markets. So we really are trying to get these locations that are licensed is where the gaming activity is going to take place.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, that's a good point. And all of this is recorded. We will post it, so all these slides will be available. If you want a copy of the slide presentation, I'm happy to send that out to the group as well.
Aiden, this is Jerry Sims. I have a question, if I may.
Sure, Jerry, go ahead.
I'd like a clarification on something. If you can't be you have to be outside of 5 miles of a tribe. Do you have to be 5 miles away from a track, or only if the track has sports betting?
So good question. We'll go back to that other slide. So it basically, these are the only requirements in statute. So it doesn't say 5 miles away from a track. It would be an event wagering facility. That would be a limited event wagering facility if a track was granted that application, if that was awarded.
Sure.
So yeah.
Very well, thank you.
You're welcome. Dave Johnson, you have your hand up?
Yes, please. Thank you. Is a LEWO allowed to operate within the 5 mile radius of another event wagering provider if the brick and mortar facility is not in operation, if they're only going to be mobile?
So there's no brick and mortar operation. I believe we're talking facilities here. So what do you mean by if the facility will be mobile?
Well, if an event wagering operator decides that they are not going to operate their brick and mortar, but maybe a couple days a year, would there be an opportunity for a LEWO to be given a license within that 5 mile radius and just shut down when they're operating and open on the rest of the year? Or
I see. No, I think that I can say that because while we're looking at these, that would violate that rule even if they're not running it. It would still violate the rule in statute, which requires 5 miles distance.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move to the next slide? Perfect. Okay. And I'm just getting back to where we were. So I think we just finished the criteria and talked about the timeline. And Ernest, just again, yes, this timeline is proposed. Absolutely, we will take feedback on adjusting that, lengthening that. and getting back to everybody. We want it to work for obviously the operators and those applying for a legal license. So that's
Aiden, maybe while I interrupt here just for a moment, maybe what I'd ask this group to do is if you could send Aiden an email, in the next 24 to 48 hours of what you think that amount of time is that you need, so we can adjust the schedule. Aiden just put his or Max put Aiden's email address in there. It's afleming@azgaming.gov, and just give us some feedback so we can kind of take that into consideration as we adjust that timeline.
okay. Thank you, Director. Moving on to the last slide, kind of just to sum up a little bit about what we're doing and just give you some basic information. So what should you know? The legal licensing fees, there is a note on this. I want to make sure everyone's aware. There was a drafting error in the rules. So you see it says application renewal is 2-year cycle. That is correct. In our rules, it says it's 5. So I want to make sure that to let everyone know that it is a 2-year cycle per statute, and we will be adjusting the rule to link up with the 2-year cycle. So saying that, we had our licensing fees. If you look at that top box, the licensing fees talk about an initial licensing fee of $25,000. The department is also going to adjust that down since the renewal is every 2 years. We're going to adjust that down to $10,000. So I want to make sure that everyone's aware of that in this presentation, and that's clear. Application renewal for the legal license is 2 years, and the initial licensing fee is $10,000.
And just a little further explanation on that. That follows sort of the scheme that we have utilized in the other licensing. The application fee is basically the payment of that first license, and then the renewal fee, you're kind of almost prepaying the next license. So over those 2 years, you will have paid that $10,000, et cetera. So that's what we used on the tribal side and the commercial side for event wagering operation.
And to follow up on that, Ernest, do you have a question?
Yeah, Aiden, maybe you were going to do this, but Ted, can you restate that again? You were mentioning the reduction of the initial license from 25 to 10 because of the reduction in the term of the license itself. What did you say about the application fee? Is that you're saying that was like a prepayment? So when you first filed the application, are you paying the $10,000 and that includes the 5?
No. So the application, or excuse me, the application fee is usually what we did in the other ones is you were paying the fee up front. So I think if you saw the application fee, okay, it's Warren, are you on? Okay, Warren.
Yeah, so again, we apologize. There was a drafting error here, but it's a 2-year cycle. So it's $1,000 for the application fee, which is non-refundable. If you are approved for a license or allocated a license, then it's the remaining of the $10,000. So another $9,000, which would make it a total of $10,000 for 2 years. Then every year after that, it's $5,000. So that once you get to your second year, you've already paid the $10,000 for the renewal.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Thanks, Ted. So that application renewals on that 2-year cycle, again, this should be very familiar. We're going to use the same online portal process that we used prior. And the reciprocity, I think, Dave, you had some question about that earlier. For entities with financial information already on file, obviously, we're talking racetracks who have to submit permits and go into deep background and financial information. If you're already on file with the Division of Racing, short form option will be made available. And we will go over that short form and long form here. It should look pretty familiar. Richard, yes.
Yes, Assistant Director and Director. Just for clarity, it's my understanding that a racetrack can apply for the limited event wagering operator license on its own right, and then also apply, because the statute says, or for an off-track betting location that it is associated with. Is that correct?
So the way
I think that they will necessarily need to work together because of that relationship that the OTB and the track have because of that signal.
Understood.
But again, we just want to clarify that just, you know, the license that goes to the track does not become an umbrella license for the network.
Correct.
Okay, it's for the individual locations. And again, go back and familiarize yourself with the factors that we've got in our rules, because there's a lot of discussion in there, or not discussion, but there are factors in there about the location of these sites and how the department are going to look and evaluate that.
Thank you, Director.
Perfect. Thank you. So really what we want, I would like you to take away from this is really just the preparation. If you can take a look, what you'll need to prepare, the basics are obviously reviewing this, review the list of operators or designees in the state, and if they're interested, the list of OTBs and racetracks to form a partnership first, because you'll need a copy also of your current approval by the Division of Racing, so make sure that that is prepared if you're an OTB or racetrack. After that, the contract with your partner, if you get one, will be submitted with the application, but the department statute requires a letter from an event wagering operator showing its partnership. So be prepared for that partnership to take place, a copy of your proof of racing meeting an OTB status, and an attestation, that third geographic point. Make sure you take a look at the geographic location and the map to demonstrate your specific location complies with statute. Those are the three big takeaways I would hope that you would get from this presentation. JD? You might be on mute, JD.
No, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit it. I apologize.
No worries. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. I'm going to turn this over so you can get a further look. Oh, Dave, go ahead.
Yes. One quick question in regards to our portal. Our portal is full, and we need to find a way to, or maybe you guys can help us reduce the size of that so we can fill out some more information.
Sure. Yeah, we'd have to probably bring in the more techie side on that. But Dave, if you reach out to me, I'd be happy to discuss it and follow up.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the short form and the long form now, just to give you guys a preview of what you're going to see. Again, similar to the timeline, we're open for feedback. It's a discussion a little bit. If you want to mull over it and then shoot me an email, happy to do that as well. But Cliff Holden, I'm going to stop presenting and let Cliff take over from here. And he was going to go over a couple of these forms.
Thank you, Wade. Good morning, everyone. Just give me a moment to share my screen. Okay, is that large enough for everyone to see?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I won't spend a whole lot of time going over, well, first of all, the application fees annotated here will obviously be adjusted as well. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over statute and rule here in the application. The application is available on our website for you to download and take a look at. So by all means, feel free to do so. So we'll scroll down to the application checklist. Here's what is going to be required for the long form application. The application, the releases, the operation license partner letter, the racing approval letter, the location attestation, any gaming division of racing violations that anyone has received, articles of incorporation or organization, partnership agreement and all amendments, bylaws, certification of good standing from registered state, current list of litigation, list of all gaming licenses, and then the financial information, audited financial statements for the last 3 years, to include but not limited to annual reports, income statements, balance sheet, statement of cash flow, notes to financial statements, last 3 years of tax returns, list of past and current SEC violations if publicly traded, and then confirmation of payment. And just a quick preview of the contents of the application. It is only 2 pages, so it's relatively short. So entity information, if you have a parent company, the main contact person, an accounting contact person. Here's where you would list the proposed physical location of the facility. The entity type, ownership, what year you use for accounting, calendar, or fiscal, federal tax ID, or if a sole proprietor social security number, state of incorporation / organization, who your operator partner is. So this would be your event wagering operator or designee. If you have a management service provider that will be running the operation for you, type of license you have currently with the Arizona Department of Gaming Division of Racing, if you've had any violations, and the current status of your racing permit. And moving on, it's just your signature pages, release of information, authorization to release credit information. And then here is the supplemental allocation attached to it, which would help answer questions as far as meeting the criteria for allocation. So I'm not going to go through and read all the questions. Again, it's available online for you to download and take a look at. But I'll just quickly scroll down. And there are 14 questions for this section.
And
So-
Cliff, I'm just going to interrupt here real quick. Maybe give us till about 11 o'clock so we can upload the corrected application, just so we don't want to have two applications out there floating around, one with incorrect fee information and the other one. So maybe just give us till 11 o'clock. And then Ernest, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I think I'll just wait. I have a hard copy of this with different dates of when they were released. And I think the easier thing will be to be sure everything's consistent is to wait till the new one comes out and reprint that.
Okay.
So I'm
Yes,
okay.
we'll work on that right away after this meeting. Just real quick, as Aiden mentioned, there will be a short form version available. The only difference in the two applications, the long form and the short form, is we would have all the financial information already on file with the department, so we wouldn't require that to be submitted again. So the application checklist is significantly shorter. The application itself, however, is the same as the long form. It's still only 2 pages, your signature pages and the releases. And that's all I have. Are there any questions in regards to the application?
Cliff, it looks like Dave Author has a question.
Yes, sir, Dave.
Quickly, and I'm speaking probably on behalf of any OTB that wants to apply. I doubt that any of them have audited financial statements. Most of them probably would not as sole proprietors or LLCs. Did I read that was going to be a requirement for an application?
Dave, we'll be sure to work, on a case-by-case basis with all applicants. And we completely understand that some of those locations would not have that information, but we'll ensure we get what information we can obtain in order to do our due diligence.
Good, thank you.
Dave Johnson.
Yes, thank you. So you've gone over this application. What I would like to know is how about the individual application? Since we already have those on file, will those need to be resubmitted?
It depends on the application that we have on file and what information is in that application. If it was an application submitted on the racing side, we would probably have to look at that and make sure we have all the required information and make a determination. If it's an individual application you previously submitted through event wagering, then it would be the same application and we would be able to use that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Cliff, for walking folks through that. And again, please just give us till about 11 o'clock today to upload the corrected application so you can look at it. And also, like I said, if you wouldn't mind submitting to Aiden your thoughts on how much more lead time you need before we open the application process. Generally, we'll probably keep the timelines the same, allow about 4 weeks from the time we open application period until the time we close it. And then the rest of the timeline will just kind of move out from there, depending on when we open that application date. But if you guys can do it in the next 24 hours, we will get back to everybody with a revised calendar and let you know when we plan to begin the process. So last chance for any questions. And we will make this recording available on our website. So if any folks couldn't join us today, they can go back and watch and take a look and get the information. All right, great. Well, my thanks again to Aiden and Cliff for walking through this, and thank you all for your time. We look forward to your feedback on the timeline, and we'll get back in touch with you just as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director, Assistant Director.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.